This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so we start Chelek Dalid Perek Shishi, which is part 4, chapter 6. And just as an introduction, so we believe, we understand that which goes on in the physical world is a manifestation of that which is going on in the spiritual world. This is a
Right.
concept that we discuss fairly often. Certainly, let's say when it comes to holidays, we often discuss it. That Pesach, we're told in the Torah that it's got to be in the Aviv, in the springtime. And that is why we, Jewish people who follow a lunar calendar, from there we see that we must adjust our calendar because the lunar year is 11 days shorter than the solar year. The Muslims follow a lunar calendar without making adjustments, and therefore their holidays keep tracking back, falling back 11 days every year. So if Ramadan was in the spring, a number of years later, it'll be in the winter, and then it will be in the fall, and then it will be in the spring, in the summer, excuse me, and then it's back to the spring, right? But we're told that Pesach, for example, must be Chag Aviv, it must be in the Chodesh Aviv, in the springtime. And therefore we adjust our calendar by adding an extra month, 7 out of every 19 years. And that's how we stay in sync with the solar calendar, meaning that we stay in sync with the seasons. And Pesach always comes out during the springtime. Why is this so important? Because, like we began, the physical world is a reflection of what's going on in the spiritual realm. And if in the spiritual world we have springtime, where there is this awakening, this coming back to life, this dormant state transforming into an active state, so that is reflective of what's happening in a spiritual sense. And Pesach is all about that rebirth and that birth of a nation and that going from this dormant state of slavery into a vibrant state of nationhood. And therefore, Pesach has to be celebrated at the time where that is the spiritual energy that is available, where that is the spiritual time that we're entering into. So to celebrate Pesach in the winter would make no sense because that's not the time that aligns with the spiritual reality of awakening, because the Jewish calendar is not at a single point going straight out, but rather we go in cycles and we enter these different tachanot. We enter these different stations, and Pesach is the tachana, is the station of freedom, deliverance, and Shavuot is the tachana of receiving Torah, and Tisha B'Av is the tachana of tragic days for us until it will eventually be transformed into a day of celebration, of geula, of redemption. And Rosh Hashanah is the tachana, is the station of judgment, and Yom Kippur is the tachana, is the station of Kippur, of atonement, of cleansing, and so on and so on. So that we've discussed many times in different contexts when it comes to the holidays. Well, that also applies, we'll soon see, to every day, the 24-hour period. And the period of darkness is a time of confusion. It's a time in this world, it's a time where we can't see that well. At a certain age, it's hard for us to drive at nighttime. I always say that I'm so fortunate to born to the generation that, please God, when I reach the time that I can no longer drive at night, then we'll have perfected the self-driving cars. So it'll not be a limitation that the earlier generations all had to deal with at a certain age, right? So darkness is a time physically in this world of confusion, of unsurety. And that too, in a spiritual sense, we'll soon see, that mirrors what's going on in a spiritual sense. That in this balance of Tov and Ra, of good and evil that exists in the world, in order to afford us the ability to choose, as we discussed in the very early chapters of Derech Hashem. So there are time periods where the kochot hatuma, where the forces of impurity have a greater shlita, they have a greater power, a greater influence. And there's time when they have less of an influence. And the same way that the darkness here is a time for confusion for us here on earth in the physical realm, so too we'll see that aligns with the spiritual reality. So let's begin Chelek Dalid, Perek Shishi, Part 4, Chapter 6. Aleph, number 1. Sidra HaChachma Elyona, the highest divine wisdom arranged, structured. Shetieh v'layla shlita l'kochot hatuma, that nighttime is a time where there is a certain power, authority that is given to the powers, kochot hatuma, of impurity. Lihit pashet, like they can then spread out. B'chol markavoteim, in all of their aspects. V'yishotetu anfeim ba'olam, and their branches, their offshoots, spread out into this world. V'yishotetu, and they get to float around, so to speak, to spread around in the world. V'kivana, and the idea, the intention, the kavana being, sheva'oto azman yasfu b'nei adam el batayim. Well, that's a time where it's good to stay home. V'yishkavu b'mitosayim, a good time to go to sleep. Yeshenim, sleep. Nachim, rest. Ad haboker, until the morning. Right? Kind of let me go to sleep and wake up when it's over. That's the idea, that time is given to us to sleep, to have less involvement with these kochot of Ra when they have, with these forces of impurity, when they have this greater shlita. Sha'az, because then in the morning, nital ha'it pashtut v'hashlita, there is taken away this ability to spread and this power to rule, min ha'kochot ha'hem, from these different forces, and from all of that, their offshoots. V'yachsu b'nei adam v'yetzu l'vodasam adei arev, and people come back. V'yetzu lavodatam adei arev, and then the day begins, and they can go out and do all of their work, all of their involvements, adei arev, until the evening again. V'hu ma shebe'er David HaMelech alav hashalom, that's what David HaMelech, King David, said in Tehillim. Tashet choshech, the darkness you make, you place darkness. V'hi layla, and behold it's night. Tizrach hashemesh, the sun shines. Yetzei adam lefoalo, then a person goes out to his chores to take care of his work, his labor. V'ulam, however, again, as always, kol ha'inyanim ha'ela, all of these concepts that we have, b'chol gvuleim v'shiureim, with all of their boundaries and their limits and their amounts, mishtarshim, the root is b'sharshe yisodot ha'hanhaga. The rules are in these sharashim, in the very roots of yisodot ha'hanhaga, of the structure, the yisod, the foundation of how God interacts with this world and the environment that he creates and presents to us in order to enable us to have our bichira, our free will, to choose, make the right choices, and to be the ba'alim, to be the true, deserved, having earned the title of owners, the ba'alim, of who we are and that which will result from that. And according to the different aspects of all these different influences, hanishpaot labruim, that channel down to us, the creations, b'chol madrogotehem, according to all their levels, as we mentioned in Chelek Rishon in the first part. V'tzarich sheteda, second paragraph of Aleph of 1. And we need to know, she'af al pi shal derech klal nomar shalaylu zman shlita takocha te'ela, even though we've said that, right, in speaking in a general sense, nighttime is the time where these kochot, these forces, have a greater power. Actually, that is predominantly the first half of the night. However, b'chatzot halayla, at midnight, and of course, when we talk about midnight, we're not talking about 12 a.m. necessarily. We're talking about chatzot, the chatzi, the midpoint between sunset and sunrise, which is the halachic chatzot, right? We have halachic hours which divide the nighttime into the nighttime hours into 12 equal parts, and the daytime hours into 12 equal parts. And it's not 12 and 12. By the equinox, it's 12 and 12. Right now in the winter, right now we're in the dead of winter, we have 14 hours of night and 10 hours of day. And in the summertime, we'll have 14 hours of daylight and 10 hours of darkness. And at those bridge points, that's we have the 12 and 12. But either way, chatzot is the midpoint of the nighttime hours, the midpoint between sunset and the next morning's sunrise. So all of these hashpa'ot that we mentioned, they actually are until the first, they exist through the first half of the night.
Rabbi.
Chatzot halayla, nishba'at hashpa'ah ha'ara, they're already the hara, the influence of illumination begins. V'ratzon, and a willingness, a wantingness and favor that comes milfanav from God, b'chol ha'olamot, permeating all of the worlds. V'nitelet hashlita mikochot hara, and this power is taken away from these kochot, the forces of impurity. V'anfeim nigrashim, and its different offshoots are chased away or banished mimakom yishuv, from where people are. Umatchelet ha'ara shel hayom litorer, and already the illumination, the clarity, which is a representation of the forces of Tov, already start to awaken. Ad shemeir hayom, until the point of the day being fully illuminated. V'nimshechet hashpa'ah haru'uyah, and then the proper fitting hashpa'ah influence comes of the daytime, of the clarity. Umitchadesh ba kol hamitziyut, and then we have this renewing, as we said before, mechadesh b'chol yom tamid, this renewing of all of the mitziyut, all of existence, and all of the hashpa'ot of Tov, the influences of Tov. So far, we are leaving out an important aspect, and that is the role that we play, the role that was granted to humankind in terms of the powers of these different influences of purity, impurity, tov, ra, good and bad. So let's go further in Aleph. V'amnam, inyan hashlita hazot, this idea of this power, shesholtin kochat ha'ela b'layla, that these forces have at night, v'gerusham, and their banishment, they're being chased away, divorced away, shenigrashim bayom, that they are banished by day. Hinehu davar mechokak b'teva olam ustarav. This is something that is that is chok, that is ingrained. It is ingrained in the nature of the world and its formation and its structure. Meaning, just like nighttime is always dark and daytime is always illuminated in the physical realm that we clearly perceive, well, like we said, that is simply a reflection of what's going on in the spiritual realm, if there is power given to the forces of impurity or not. Zulat hashlita, but this is all besides the shlita, the power, v'hachna'ah, and the submissiveness or the subjugation or the squelching of shemagat lahem, which comes to them b'maaseh ha'adam, from the actions of humankind. V'zeh, and that is Shishi'ara ha'chachma elyon, that the highest wisdom, the divine wisdom, assessed, measured, shiur, measured, sheliyot mitziyut hatov hara amiti, that in order that there is this existence of Tov and Ra, and we said there has to be an existence of Tov and Ra in order for us to make real choices and to be the Ba'alim, the owners, the deserved and earned owners of the Tov that we bring about. So in order for there to have this mitziyut, this existence of Tov and Ra, Hamiti, in truth, Shehu HaNimshach, which results, which flows, which is pulled, Mimase, from the actions of B'nei HaBechira, from the free-willed beings known as humankind. So the world has to have in it, built into its natural laws, alul, this potential, this possibility, lishlita tarabo, that Ra can rule over it. And we've certainly experienced times in history where Ra was certainly sholetbo. Ba'ofen shekach yehav sharut litpashtut hara zeh b'chalakim mimenu, in a way that there needs to be the possibility for this Ra to spread out, b'chalakim mimenu, right, into some of our actions. Kamo leheder, just like we have the ability to cause a lacking, a removal of the hitpashtuto vahem, of its affecting our actions. Vulam, and therefore lishiyeh, for this to be the case, gazra chachmel yonah, the highest wisdom, decreed, heyot ra'oi, that it would be proper and fitting, shabazman atzmo, that not just our actions, but there are seasons. Just like we have seasons of the year, which reflect the spiritual reality, there is a cycle, a daily cycle, which reflects this proliferation of kochos of Ra and the proliferation of the kochot of Tov, of the powers of good and evil, purity and impurity. Shebizman atzmo, that built into the cycle of time itself, yechelik echad, there will be a part, a portion, sheinatein lo shlita v'tpashtut mitzad atzmo, that it will be given to it this shlita, this power, this ruling, and this ability to spread mitzad atzmo, regardless of the actions of humankind. Mitzad atzmo, it inherently has a greater capacity at that time. V'hinehu hachana l'mash efshar shinatein lo mitzad masei adam, and then this readies it for that which it can gain from the actions of humankind. And there'll be another part of that daily cycle, sheyinatel mimenu hashlita, that this ability, this power, will be somewhat stunted. This added or ability will be taken away, and its ability will be minimized. Once again, right, where man's actions then, that readies it, that a person's actions will be able to cause a further weakening, or conversely, sadly, a strengthening of it even during that time. V'hinei sam Adon Baruch Hu shtei mitziuyot chazakim. So God set up these two mitziuyot, these two concepts, these two existences, ha'or v'ha'choshech, light and darkness, which, like we said, is a reflection that we see down here of the spiritual energies that are waxing strong or diminishing during those times. Shehem nimshachim mivchinat ha'ara v'ha'olam shebi'ar mechelik rishon. And this physical light and darkness that we experience through our physical senses, they are nimshachim, they draw from this idea, the concepts of the ha'ara, the spiritual illumination, the ha'helem, and the spiritual concealment that we discussed, Shabiana, that we explained in the first chelek rishon. V'natalem chelek bazman, and each of them were given a portion of time. The hainu, which is, as we now understand, hayom v'alayla, day and night. V'achareihem, and those physical states of light and dark that we physically can sense, nimshachim, pulls, shlitat kochot hatuma shezacharnu, v'gerusham. It either pulls in during the darkness, the shlita, the power of these forces of impurity, and the light brings about gerusham. They're being divorced, they're being banished, they're being sent out. V'hakol hazmana, and this is all as a preparation, as setting the stage, l'toldot hama'asim, for that which is born from our actions, that which results from our actions, as we have mentioned. And with this, we'll understand different things that we do at the start of the day that he'll go through, something that he doesn't touch upon. Maybe later he will when he discusses Talmud Torah, is that there's a special segula, special strength, power to learning at night, right? If you could take during those times of night, of darkness, of confusion, of kochot hatuma, and infuse that with Talmud Torah as a study of Torah, so that is an incredible strength to bring against those kochot of Ra. And that's why the Gemara talks about a special segula of Roni Balayla, sing out in the nighttime. Singing out meaning with our study of Torah in the nighttime. V'amnam. Let's start Beth. Uz, you want to say something? You're muted. Ich kann nicht her. Don't hear you, Uzi. You're muted.
Funny. Who else is on? It's just me?
Robin is on, I believe.
Is she?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Just her camera's not working.
You know, Dali told me that she's going to a candle lighting event and she was going to watch the session on YouTube. So that's why she's not here.
Okay, thank you. And it is being recorded. So
Good.
Dalit, a shout out to you when you do listen to it. Okay.
Yep.
Let's go to Bet, paragraph 2. V'amnam bihinatein shlita zot el kochot hara ha'ela. When this strength, authority, power is given to these forces of impurity, ubihi pashtam, and when they proliferate, spread out into the world, nimtza chashko shel olam, the darkness of the world, mitrabeh umitchazek, increases and gets strengthened, the spiritual darkness. V'adam, and a person, gam hu biyoto shocheva mitato, even though he's there sleeping on his bed, gam alav mitpashet, even on him there is this spread, this effect of hitpashtut minatuma hamishotetet. There is this spread of this impurity that is there in the world, and it affects the human being. B'shi'ur shenitan la, to the degree that it has the ability to affect. Kafi hashayachut asher la, according to the degree that asher la, that it has, b'gufo shel hadam, on the body of a person, mitzad chamriyut v'yetzer hara shabo, as a result of his chamriyut, his physicality, and the Yetzer Hara that is in him. And I think also we'd have to say that every person also will be affected. And the degree that a person is affected will be dependent on the Chamriyut v'Yetzer Hara shebo, right? Just how much physicality, how material is that person? How much does that person align with that Yetzer Hara, with those kochot of Ra? The nosaf al zeh, and in addition to all this, shekvar huchan b'sidrei hanaga, it was already established in the very structure, the seder of hanaga, of the way God interacts and how the forces interact with this world. Shebiyot ha'adam yashen, that when a person is asleep, chelkei nishmato ha'elyonim, the higher levels, the more spiritual levels of a person's soul, mistalkim mimenu, they take leave from him. Ukamosha zachan, like we mentioned in Chelek Sheni, in the second, in part 2 of this sefer. The toim tam mitav miktzat. Of course, when the neshama completely leaves the body, that is what we call death. And when the higher, loftier parts of the neshama leave, then it is a partial, quasi-death. V'toim ta'am mit, and a person tastes the taste of death, b'miktzat, to a partial degree. V'hu ma she'amru chazal, that's what Chachamim Zechron Levrach, our sages of blessed memory, have taught us. Sheina, sleep. Echan mishishim b'mita is 1/60th of death. The Gemara has a number of things that are 1/60th. And the idea of 1/60th is, well, by kashrut, by keeping kosher. If something non-kosher falls into something kosher, or something meat falls into something dairy, if you've got 60-to-1 ratio, so then it becomes nullified. It becomes, right, you can't taste it. Less than that, you can taste it. At 60, 1/60, that is that in-between point, that gray area, where you might be able to taste it, might not be able to taste it. So we say Shabbat is 1/60th, the Sabbath is 1/60th of Olam Haba, the world to come. So that means that one can taste a degree of Olam Haba on Shabbat, or one cannot taste it. It depends on the Shabbat that we involve ourselves in. But sleep is considered to be 1/60th of death. I just want to add in just a point that, death takes place when the neshama leaves. So all of these different medical, right, so the Gemara says clearly the cessation of heartbeat and breathing, that is death, meaning that those are indications that the neshama, the soul, has left and the person has died. So the person dies when the neshama leaves. Those physical signs are indications that, yes, the neshama has left, so the person has died. Or we should say the body has died. The person, of course, lives on. The neshama then goes on to the next stage. Right? So the whole issue that we have about brain death, that the medical world accepts brain death as death, even though the heart is still beating and the person might still be breathing, but they'll accept brain death as death. So that is debated very heavily amongst the different halachic authorities. Is that actually considered to be death? Meaning, does the neshama leave at that point or not? And there are tremendous ramifications, of course, because the medical world, by stating that that is considered dead, will allow then organs to be harvested. If the person is signed on to be an organ donor, then that beating heart can be removed and transplanted to someone else, and the heart is viable and the lungs are viable. I believe the liver are viable, or mostly viable, if they're removed while the heart is still beating.
Yep.
So So
Rabbi.
medically, they'll say that that's perfectly fine. Some poskim will say that's okay. Others will say no, the person is still alive, and therefore agreeing to have that done is tantamount to suicide. The doctors doing that is tantamount to murder, taking a
Yep.
person's life. Because the
Is that
question is, has the neshama left? I'm sorry, Robin?
is that what Judaism does not believe in giving like organ donations like taboo then in Jewish religion?
No, no. Organ donations are halakhically acceptable once the person has died. Now,
But like the heart though, they couldn't do a heart.
so some will say yes, you can,
Uh-huh.
and they'll view the beating heart when the person is brain dead. Right? Imagine a terrible accident and a person
Uh-huh.
is decapitated. Right? The heart's still
Right.
going to be beating for a little bit, even though the head's not attached. Now, everyone would
Right.
agree that this person is dead. The head was severed in this terrible, horrific crash. Everyone would agree the person is dead, even though the heart is beating. So there are those that say that brain death is a physiological decapitation.
Oh,
And
okay.
even though the head is attached, for all intents and purposes, the head is detached. It's like the head is detached. So the person is dead. Even though the heart is beating, everyone would agree that in such a case, if a doctor could get in there after during an accident happened and the person was Rahman al decapitated, and a doctor could get in there and remove the heart, everyone would say the person is dead. It's not a problem.
Oh, okay.
So how is it viewed over here? Some rabbinic authorities say that's okay, right? He's dead. Brain death is death. Others say no, right? Personally, when people ask me, so what I say is, look, there is no obligation to give your organs for donation. There
Right.
are clear obligations not to take your own life or not to have someone take your life. So what I say, the way I lean on this, not that I'm a halakhic authority whatsoever, but the way that I lean, being again that some say it's okay, some say it's not okay. The ones who say it's okay say you can donate, but there's no mitzvah to donate per se. Then the ones who say it's not okay says it's like suicide or murder. So I personally lean towards not donating organs while the heart is still beating, not donating organs based on brain death, but only once the heart has stopped and breathing and heart has stopped. At that point, the person has died. That is the point where anything that could be used for others, if a person so chooses to do so, that can then be those organs can be harvested and given to someone
Well,
else.
how about I thought like in the Jewish religion that you were supposed to be buried with all your and like you're not supposed to like defile your body or you're not supposed to
Okay,
like
okay,
like
good.
oh, you
So
you don't
those are all the questions that come up,
okay.
right?
Uh-huh.
So the way that those are viewed is, well, that's all the parts that have died, right? They must be buried. But this is going back to life. This is going back to life. If a person was pronounced clinically dead and then resuscitated, no one says, no, 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 you can't resuscitate. You have to bury him. No, 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 resuscitate. Right. So if these parts of the body, the tissues, organs, whatever it is, if they can be resuscitated, then great, right? And in terms of defiling the body, so the way that these would view it, that's not defiling the body when you're using parts of the body
For
to
life.
grant life to someone else. But
Yep.
that's only to grant life to someone else, meaning it's not to donate one's body to science or to
Oh,
research, right?
okay.
Because that's not giving direct life. Even though, yes, but the doctors will be trained and therefore they'll be better trained. No,
Yeah.
that we're across the board not allowed to do.
Oh, okay. I was thinking that would be for ultimate, like indirectly for life, saving in the future.
Correct. Indirectly for life is not enough. It must
Okay.
speak directly for life to give someone life. And they discuss even a corneal transplant, right, which is not something that a person can live if they're blind, right? But
Right.
even so, that's considered life-giving because of the dangers and the dangers towards self-preservation that present themselves if a person is blind. And even in one eye, right? The poskim say that it's okay. The person is not completely blind. She's blind in one eye, but one eye does not give us that depth perception. And once again, that is considered something that could be or is often life saving, life preserving, life maintaining. But for
Okay.
science, for research, that we're not allowed to do. But it's all
Okay.
based on this idea of when does the neshama leave, and science can't tell us that. That's
Right.